I decided to quit my job. Can you work for free though? I remember waking up multiple days being like, oh, have I got paid yet?
What lessons did you learn from that you could maybe pass on to those that are looking to do what you do?
The barrier to entry is lower. Cameras are much better now. If you call them a content creator, sometimes they get annoyed.
And you, if I called you a content creator, would you get annoyed? Come on.
You've always just got to be a content machine.
Right, so what are we doing to society? And this is the rat race we're all in, and it's so damaging.
It went from being fun and maybe like educational or something like that to just how can we keep someone on this for as long as possible.
When did you think you became a photographer?
You weren't a photographer until you were like a working commercial photographer.
What then is the key to getting better?
I would say
Elliot Simpson, welcome to the Move podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Great to have you.
Yeah, cheers.
I thought we'd start by a way to introduce yourself and your work. But, for those people clicking on this podcast now, watching us sat here, I want to know what you want them to know about you and what you want them to know about your artistry.
Right. Interesting. I guess just more of an understanding about the person behind the camera and a bit about my journey into photography, how that went, and then more into filmmaking as well. So yeah, just a better understanding of the person behind the camera.
Why do you think that matters?
I feel like it helps people sometimes to connect with your work and yourself a bit better. So rather than being a faceless account. So yeah, which I'm not, but
Tell us a little bit about your background then. Tell us about the person behind the camera.
So I'm from England originally. I tell people I'm from London because it's easier than saying where I'm actually from is from a little county next to London called Essex.
People know about Essex.
Yeah, for the wrong reason. Yeah. People know about Essex from the show called Towie, which aired years ago. I mean, probably shows our age as well.
Is it not going anymore?
Don't think so.
Oh, the only way is Essex.
Yeah. So yeah, I grew up there and then didn't get into photography till quite late after university. I was bored, looking for a hobby, actually had some money for once. So my first job out of uni, I studied as a designer. So I was working as a product designer and yeah, had some money, was interested in photography from my brother actually. So he was the photographer in the family. And this was just around the time when the A7 was about to come out. So the original A7. And that was
makes
like,
you sound old.
Yeah. So this was 2014, I think that came out. So the first mirrorless camera, I think it was. And I bought one of those secondhand for like £600 and then got some Minolta lenses from the 80s because you could buy an adapter for it because it was mirrorless and just put on any lens, which is great. So my first setup was like full frame and it cost like £700. And I had like 24, 50 and 35, all from the 80s, like f1.4. It was cool. A good introduction into photography, I think. My actual initial inspiration for getting into photography was from, I remember 500 pics.
Yeah.
That's also showing how long I've been doing it for. So I was on that and like Flickr a little bit, but Pinterest as well, and seeing all of these astrophotography pictures. So never seeing like pictures of the Milky Way before. I think like camera technology was good enough that you could do it well. So that really piqued my interest at the time. I was like, wow, I can't believe someone took a picture of that with a camera. Like I've never seen that. You can't see that with your naked eye that well. So I tried doing that. My first astrophotography shots were really bad. In the like, England's pretty light polluted, as you'd know. And I went to this reservoir after work, tried to take these pictures, and it was just so orange along the horizon. The sky was like purple, but there was a few stars in it, and I was stoked on that at the time. And then from then, I just started traveling a bit more with the money that I'd made from working, and it kind of snowballed from there. But I left myself in a bit of a weird situation where I studied design at uni, like I said, and my final year project was a bicycle light for the city. So I decided to quit my job and pursue developing this product, which was a big task. and bigger than I thought at the time, I think. Like trying to launch a product with tech in it is a pretty huge undertaking. You need a lot of money from crowdfunding. And about a year in, I didn't believe in the idea enough. And I'm the founder, so kind of need to believe in your own ideas. So I basically was left at a fork in the road where I'd had a year out of work as a designer, was doing photography like for fun on the side and some weddings here and there, like as second shooters and editing weddings for people. But yeah, was left at a point where I couldn't do this thing anymore. It was either go back into design after a year out or try and do photography because I really enjoyed it. So I just went for photography and I was so unprepared. I don't think I'd worked as a second shooter on weddings, like I said, but I'd never worked really commercially or anything like that, or was drawing in much money, didn't really have a plan for it. I think this was 2018. So Instagram was kind of, people were getting quite big on Instagram, like the OGs who'd done it from like 2016 or something, like those days.
Where you could just post a photo and
It would absolutely blow up. Or someone would share, those repost pages, like feature pages. Someone would share one of those on the big account and you'd wake up to thousands of new followers. Whereas that just doesn't work these days.
No.
So it was around that time. And yeah, I mean, pre-pandemic as well, it was cheaper to travel. And I was in a group of friends in the UK. Everyone was in the same kind of boat. So we were traveling, just running around with our cameras, shooting like landscapes and stuff like that and having loads of fun. So was doing that for a while, started getting more jobs. And then, yeah, it kind of progressed from there. And
is most of your stuff for brands and commercial stuff then?
I'd say it was, yeah. Yeah. That was my main income, was commercial stuff. So for like clothing brands and automotive and things like that, and weddings as well. Still second shot weddings for quite a while because it was just consistent and yeah, there's a lot of weddings, there's a lot of demand.
You talked about being very unprepared with, and I think we've all been there. We think, oh,
Yeah.
we've got this now. We can do it.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
go. Let's just go and see what happens, right? But it can't be that bad. And then you get into the real world, and it's a bit of a clusterfuck.
Yeah, definitely.
What lessons did you learn from that you could maybe pass on to those that are looking to do what you do?
I would say if you're working, which you probably are, before you go and do something like that, it would be to work part-time if you can, and then build up a portfolio or work. Because at the time I wasn't really getting consistent work. So for me, I had some money saved up for my job though. So it's either saving up enough money to be able to give yourself time where you won't have work, or to slowly taper off the work until you can move over into photography for like full time. So rather than just diving straight into it, which adds a lot of stress. I remember waking up multiple days being like, oh, have I got paid yet? Or, oh, how much money do I have? And yeah. And I was living in London, which is not cheap. So,
no, not cheap.
Yeah.
Fast forward to today then, and what type of content, art, photography, videography, whatever you want to label these things. Tell us kind of what your business portfolio looks like today.
Business portfolio.
Well, in terms of the model, how do you market yourself?
So over the years, I've progressed more into video. And as of last year, I set up my own production company. So to take that further and kind of work with more of a team of people and work on bigger projects in the future. So I set that up towards the end of last year, which is going to be more of the commercial side of what I do. That's called Faro Film. Because photography for me was like my hobby first. And like many people, you get good at your hobby and you try and turn it into a job. And while that's great, it kind of kills the reason why you did it in the first place. So I definitely lost touch of that a little bit. So to retain that and keep it as a passion that I want to do for God knows how long, I wanted to keep the stuff I shot for me and then build more of a personal brand around that and kind of maybe do less of commercial photography and keep it as my like art form,
Well, you laugh when you say art form, but it seems to be a dirty word these days.
I don't know, because everyone labels themselves. I don't know. Artists shouldn't have a bad. Being an artist shouldn't have a bad rap, though, should it? Really,
No.
But I feel like people throw throw it around. Um,
Because everyone has a camera and everyone can learn it and everyone
yeah.
can put themselves out there.
Yeah, everyone can be a content creator. I think that's the one that some people don't want to be labeled as. If you're a photographer that takes maybe pride in conceptual work or a lot of time into your shoots, if you call them a content creator, sometimes they get annoyed.
And you, if I called you a content creator, would you get annoyed?
um, no, probably not. I mean, I'd like to think I'm not just creating content because I don't know, when you say that, it feels like it devalues the amount of effort you put into it. I don't know,
Yep.
because content can just be content online these days can be so easy and simple and throwaway. So I guess that's where people get maybe a bit offended. But
Where do you see that going? I mean, we could probably talk for the rest of the podcast about this because in the photography world specifically, tiny little niche of just general life,
yeah,
it seems to be the way I perceive it and the way many photographers perceive it is it's highly saturated, right? It's more competitive. There are more people coming into the industry and more people throwing stuff around for free and for cheap and collabs and all this kind of stuff, right? For good or bad, whatever you believe in terms of that method and that methodology. But where do you see it continuing? Do you think that's going to be a little bit of a bubble? Do you think like the true artist and the true like quality will always shine through?
um, I guess seeing where content goes for like someone who's wanting to do more of the artistic route or the commercial one or both.
Both.
Both. I feel like for the commercial one, like you said, people doing stuff for free. I've seen that happen more and more, and brands do more like gifted campaigns and things like that. Whereas that was less of a thing when I first started. So I feel like there's also much more people doing it, and more people kind of bring. I feel like sometimes it's a race to the bottom for
Mm,
people getting into it because it is easier now the barrier to entry is lower. Cameras are much better now. There's like so many creators out there. So I'm not sure where that's gonna go, especially with the rise of AI for like product photography and things like that, where you could replicate it
mm,
probably quite soon, which is pretty scary.
yep.
In terms of the artistry, I feel like that will probably always have its place. People are always like with film died and came back, and I feel like people still enjoy it. So I feel like there's always a place for all formats of photography, and people build obviously their brand around it and their identity from their work. So I feel like that probably has more longevity, but we'll see. I mean, things are changing quite quickly, so
Things are changing very, very quickly. And
yeah,
that's the way I look at it these days is it's not necessarily one or the other. It's not necessarily good or bad.
yeah,
I mean, I fight my instinct to not think it's bad. The way
yeah,
we get homogenized and what used to be such a true art form, but it's just the way it is. I mean, a lot of people argue that where you're giving more opportunities to people that may not have been able to get into it before because of maybe expense or
yeah, yeah, yeah,
going to classes and actually learning, not just watching a couple of YouTube channels, but with the technology these days, even just with an iPhone, right?
yeah, yeah.
You can learn the basics of photography, or at least you can call yourself a creator. But a lot of people argue that that's a good thing, right? You're lowering the barriers to entry and therefore
Yeah.
giving more opportunities to people and more.
I feel like that is a good thing to, especially for filmmaking. Like when I first got into filmmaking, like there wasn't FX freeze and things like that, where
Really.
yeah, you couldn't have cine cameras that are that small and that
Mm.
capable just weren't a thing. Especially when I was like growing up and looking at like things on. Also, there wasn't the social media like there is today. It wasn't video focused. It was all pictures. Like
Yeah.
Instagram in 2014 was just pictures of your mates doing random crap.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, technology's allowed that, hasn't it, with lower barriers to entry and more people getting into it. But I feel like that's a good thing because it doesn't take away from the creation of the image. It's just the capturing of it. You're still working with people and still planning, and everything's the same in that sense.
Yeah, I think it can only be a good thing that more people can do those types of jobs if they're able to do something that they love doing from the comfort of, let's say, a YouTube vlogger, right? If that's something they can do and earn comfortable salary from it, then hey, that means more people are going to be happy, I guess, in the world and more creative, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's difficult to not kind of put up your barriers to that, because the only real byproduct of that is that we become diluted, right?
Yeah.
Our work and it's harder to be seen, and if we think we're good, or we think we have this ego, like, oh yeah, we're proper artists.
Yeah.
It's
But
like,
like,
well, maybe not, but maybe we are, and
no one's gonna see it.
yeah, no one's gonna see it. I mean, are you an artist if no one sees it?
Some of the big artists of the past, you hear about photographers where they find all their film after they've died, and then they become famous
Yeah, I don't
after
want to
they've
be like that,
passed.
man.
I don't want to be like that. Yeah, I want to be famous now.
Yeah. I think that's I know we joke about that, but that is the society we live in, right? We had the pop idol days, or in American Idol. We had those kind of early 2000s where people would go onto those shows. They didn't want to be a singer; they just want to be famous. Surrounded by all the reality TV shows and Big Brother and
Oh yeah,
I'm a Celebrity and all this kind of stuff, right? The goal was to be famous
for doing nothing. I guess people who are singers had a talent, but some of the reality TV shows, it's like, why are you famous? Famous for what, though?
Famous for what? For just being on TV.
Yeah.
But I feel like that is actually a bigger problem. It's not so much because if that's the intent of the majority of the population, and not majority, but a large proportion of the creator community, right? That is a lot of people's goal. If that's the goal, then
to have a big following.
Yeah, just to have a big following. And that drives the famous word that we all talk about. That drives the algorithms.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's just a demand and supply. That's all it is. It's basic digital economics. So the more people want to be famous, the more the algorithms are going to be adjusted according to that demand. And so we create all this. We create this shit. We create this homogenization. We create this dumbing down.
Everything's, people just end up doing the same thing, or what's popular and just that, which is kind of sad to see. When, I mean, personally, I can't really deal with most of the content on Instagram, I feel like, well, not just Instagram, but just I feel like sometimes people are putting a lot of effort into something, and it gets based on like views and engagement and stuff like that, where someone could just upload something. I know, it's an iPhone video of basically nothing, someone walking along just panning up to something, and that gets so much more views.
Viral.
Viral compared to like a project that multiple people have been involved in, and they just don't get the same views, which is, I think, a shame, especially being in the industry myself and being inspired by other people who are good at their craft. And I feel like that's a great thing about social media platforms, is being inspired by people.
Absolutely.
I feel like that's one of the greatest things about social media, really, is that feeling of being inspired to get out and create is amazing. And I feel like I just don't get that from social media as much.
I think we get it more than a lot of, if I was to look up your Instagram, it'd be probably very similar to mine. You follow just most of your following is photographers. Most of people who you follow are photographers or filmmakers, right?
Yeah.
So you see a lot of cool content. But I've talked about this previously on other episodes. I did a test a couple of years ago where I just opened up a dummy account. I'm sure many people have done this. No followers, no following, and just gone to homepage on Instagram, just see what Instagram's going to throw at me.
God.
And that made me realize what a tiny niche we're
definitely
in. Like tiny niche.
I think that's part of why, people complain about Instagram and reach and engagement and everything, but it's such a bigger platform now. It's not just, it started with photos. So inevitably it's going to be quite focused around the photography community in that sense. Whereas now it's just a global platform for God knows what. Like someone, like cat videos, they do so well. I know people that have a cat account they're really talented at what they do, but the cat account just blows up.
I think that's the big difference. That's the sad thing. I mean, you look at on the other side of the fence, people go, well, it's almost like the freedom of speech arguments, freedom of opportunity, equal opportunities. We get to upload this because we think it's fun and entertaining. It might be fun and entertaining for other people.
Yeah.
But when we start to strategize that, and we strategize, I'm a big, people sometimes call me a snob because I just like standards. And so that's why I look on Instagram, it's like this, like why are we not pursuing education? Why are we not pursuing inspiration? Why are we not pursuing awareness and good causes? And they have their place in Instagram, but most of the shit that people doom scroll on is not that.
Oh no.
Right. So what are we doing to society?
Doesn't give you any value.
Nothing.
It's yeah, I feel like I mean, the way it's set up as well, it went from being fun and maybe like educational or something like that to just how can we keep someone on this for as long as possible?
Yeah.
Which is
Which can't be a good
no, it can't be.
business model. Well, it can
Well,
be
it
good
could be good for them and
for the money.
that add revenue and
Yeah.
everything from but yeah.
Do you feel like you have a responsibility as an artist with a decent, very good following and a good audience and experience behind you, and clearly a lot of skill and great portfolio and just a good artist? Do you feel like you have a responsibility to try and make an impact for the better in that sense?
I would like to, yeah. Where it's just figuring out what that is, I guess. You know, the thing people say to do well on social media or things that you can do to like build a following or things like that is to like educate, inspire, and entertain, right? And sometimes it's quite hard to do all of those,
Yeah.
especially if you're just posting a picture. So I feel like that's where people will record themselves and talk and share information and their personality as well, which I think is good, but I feel like I haven't got to the stage yet where I'm like, this is because I didn't start Instagram to do that. I didn't take pictures to do that. I didn't start taking videos to do that. I feel like in some cases it is a bit of a natural progression though. You get good at something and then you can share your skills with other people and help other people, which is something I'd like to do more of in the future, is to share my wisdom, I guess.
In a course?
Yeah. In a course. Yeah, like probably start with like an editing course. And then I would like to do some in-person workshops as well. It's just overcoming a bit of the imposter syndrome, I think sometimes.
Which we all live and die by.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I think the in-person stuff is something so much more powerful than. I mean, we all want to live online, and we all want an
Yeah,
element
yeah.
of relatively passive income. It's not passive, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Which is kind of amazing. But there's nothing like, and I'm sure you've done it, even just giving someone advice in person, right? There's nothing like a bit of fulfillment,
Oh
a
yeah.
lot of fulfillment from that, passing it forward or giving it back. And I fucked up so many ways. Here's where you shouldn't fuck
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
Try not to do this, right? I think that's quite
I think
powerful.
that's really good in person because especially with YouTube, there's hundreds and hundreds of people just like bombarding you with like, you're doing this wrong, like do this instead. And that's,
Yeah,
I feel like all of that stuff, I
overwhelming.
look at it and just like, I'm just going to close that. I feel like, yeah, sometimes it's a bit overwhelming, but in person, I mean, as well as having a group of people, I've never done it myself and I would like to. Yeah, to just show a group of people how you operate because I think if you've been doing it for a long time, you don't realize what you know and how things are very easy to you and
True.
come naturally to you after the years of experience that someone might be completely stuck on something that you completely overlooked.
Yeah.
And that is, like you said, the beauty of being around people and showing them a skill and passing that knowledge on. It feels good as well, obviously, helping your friends out,
Yeah.
helping people out. So yeah.
What do you think is like the most common myth? I think most guests I speak to, they have kind of one question that keeps coming up in their DMs and emails and stuff. Like for me, it's always the camera, right? What camera do you use? Or they see a video, oh, what lens is that? Well, you're asking the wrong question, but I'll answer it anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
What's the most common myth that you found in the video world or the photography world that you've seen out there?
I mean, gear is obviously a big one that people always ask about. It's probably that, or maybe how did you edit it actually, which has more merit, I think, than what gear did you use because
Yeah.
one's just capturing something, the other is how you process that.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's a lot more to learn on the editing front.
What do you think that people don't understand though about the fact that gear isn't maybe important, or the edit isn't as important as in camera, or is it? Or do you think there's
Yeah, I guess
a lot of confusion?
I'd say pre-production is the most important thing, and sometimes depending on what you're doing.
Pre-production.
Yeah, if you have an idea of what you want, sometimes things just happen, but sometimes they happen because you've got this plan in place and you're in this location and you have experience on the light and how it looks and the people you're with. And so for me, I think that was the biggest learning curve was how you set up shoots, especially ones that have more creation behind them, more of an idea. and they're more involved with more people and moving parts. I feel like I wish there was more information about that actually when I was getting into it, like how you set up a shoot with all these people and how do you navigate that. It's quite tricky, to be honest.
Where do you start if you've been given a project? Obviously, it depends on specifics,
Yeah.
subjectivity, and everything. But where do you what's your basic process for pre-production?
Okay, so I did a spec film recently about this is quite relevant to what we were talking about as well. Basically a person who's like depressed, doom scrolling, that kind of that jazz. Just yeah, basically most people these days.
Yeah, that avatar that
Yeah,
is
yeah.
common everywhere.
So the idea was around was the book. So that was the beginning of it. So read this book.
I was gonna say, what book?
It's by Johan Hari, and it's
Oh,
about being distracted or something like that. I
okay.
can't remember the name.
Okay.
Maybe you can just add that.
We'll put it up on screen after a bit of googling.
Yeah, but I finished that, and that actually came when I finished it. Threads came out the next day, I think, and it was in the book. It talks a lot about had the guy from The Social Dilemma, Tristan, I think it was.
Yeah,
Was
Tristan Harris.
yeah, I think that's it. He was an ex Google
Yep.
employee
Yep.
working on the Gmail, I think,
Yep.
at the time. So he was in it, and it talks a lot about how social media's changed and how it's just like hunting for your attention, and how people were taking like a detox from social media. And obviously, I lived in a time where I remember what it was like before social
Yeah.
media, and for me, I was like 27 before like social media is the way it is today, which is most of my life really. So yeah, having that was the initial idea for the film. And then from there it was storyboarding, like having sketches of stuff, how I think the story could go.
How do you learn that? How do you learn how to story? I mean, it can't just be sit down and write, right? There's got to be I've never done the storyboarding, but there's got to be a process to it. Or is it just?
I mean, I started with, I guess, a narrative of how I want it to go, like the beginning, middle, the end. And there's obviously a bunch of narrative arts that films take on as well. So I looked at some of those and some of the like common ones, and the kind of one that I wanted to portray. So I went for people might have heard this. It's like the rags to riches, basically, where it's you start with a character that's not having a great time, and like obviously the rags like being poor, and then to rich, so they progressively have a better time throughout the film and overcome whatever hurdle they had in their beginning. So I think I went for that, and then built a narrative around that just with text initially. I mean, this is my way as well. That could be completely wrong.
Whatever works for you, I guess, right?
Yeah. So, and then from that, it was how, I guess, the location or what this person's doing. Like now they're overcoming this thing. Like, how's it look? Is it in the film? It's them finding flow state again from driving a car through the mountains and ending up on the beach, which I know how to do and film, and I knew the locations in my head already. So
Right.
I kind of knew what I wanted to shoot already, which helped from this experience. And then it was drawing really bad drawings of how I would like each scene to go, and location wise. So starting inside and getting reference from things online, from films I'd seen and poses of people that were distressed. So one of them is like a library of places which has it's not an ad either, but it's called Shot Deck, which I referenced a bunch of images from films. So you can type in like the color of it, what the actor's doing, or the camera, or the location, and it will give you a bunch of frames from films. So you can kind of storyboard around that. So I've done that a couple of times, and that does help. And then I guess refining it and to find exactly what you have in your head online, which is why I wish I was a slightly better drawer, or especially when you're doing it yourself. When it's a spec project, some people might collaborate that are good at drawing and can do that thing. I know some people use AI for storyboarding.
AI.
Just use AI.
Yeah, just use AI.
just don't do any of this.
So after storyboarding, it's a matter of, I mean, you already know the locations, and then it's getting people.
Yeah. So for this one, it was because it was a spec project and no one's paying for it. It's not funded by anyone. It's not sponsored by anyone. So at the time, it was people who are willing to work for a portfolio piece and to elevate whatever they're doing. So that's what Instagram's great for the community is people. I put out a story and I had loads of people who were keen. So within a day, I had like dozens of people who were
Cool.
keen to be in it. So that was really cool. So I went with someone I know called Tate, and yeah, from there it's doing all the production side of it, which for me was probably the hardest thing because there's so many moving parts, especially when you're shooting a car and you're dealing with locations and people who like own these buildings. So we shot in this guy's kitchen, and then we shot in his living room, and then we shot in his friend's studio in Dalston, and then it was to Wales and shooting on the roads there and on the beach. So quite involved, but
Fun.
yeah. I mean, especially shooting cars is always really fun. Like rolling shots is.
Why you and Finn get on well.
Yeah, exactly.
When you've got the finished product, I mean, we could probably talk about editing for hours, but let's say you've got the finished product. What's your goal and what you want to do with those finished products? You send them off to festivals, or you just post them, see what the reaction is, or you just keep them for yourselves? What do you do currently, and where do you want it to hope? Where do you want to hope to get it to?
So for me, this type of bigger film, especially like a narrative piece that has like a story behind it, is pretty new to me. Something I want to do more of in the future, but I'd say within the last year, I've only just started doing that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So my plan for this is to have it on the website, post it on social media, do the longer film, which will get no views because it's too long and too much work goes into it. So no one's going to bother. So I'll just do a reel saying like location versus shot, and then that'll probably get more views.
We laugh, but it's true.
It's probably true.
Yeah.
So yeah, post a film, do cut downs of it, and maybe just share some more of the process, which might help people out. Even though sometimes, especially when you're quite new to something, you feel like, oh, am I in the right place to tell people? But I guess it's subjective and there's lots of different ways to achieve something. So it's just doing it. And then after that, it'd be having it, as part of the portfolio and approaching brands with it to say, like, we can do this sort of work. And we can do narrative pieces. And so that was the idea behind it.
As the production company.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. People forget that actually, a lot of the work people currently do or do in the present moment is not just for their enjoyment and for, a nice product, essentially.
Yeah.
It's a tool to send to use as a pitch, right? To go and get jobs. Like it's such a, the intent behind it is often, I'm sure when you're creating these films, like, oh, do I want to create something that's 100% original to me and my concept? Or do I want to factor in what I know about what companies like and what brands like?
Yeah.
Do you battle with that a lot?
I feel like, I do, because for a lot of my work from photography, I've just made it what I like doing, basically. And I definitely lent into that recently. And that gives me the most enjoyment, but sometimes it's not the most commercial. So it's, especially with the filmmaking stuff, the production stuff, I want it to be commercial and people to, especially for a spec project, it's, I guess, a balance of your creative input to not make it too commercial, I guess, but it still needs to show that you can do that kind of thing. So it's a bit of a balance, and I'm still finding it, to be honest. So but it's definitely something to bear in mind when you're creating something like that. If it's going to be for a pitch for a commercial project, then it needs to have some merit in that sense.
Do you have a overarching goal of where you want to get to with all of this?
Why
are you laughing?
It's just funny. I mean, I'm still figuring it out, to be honest. I think I'd like to go more into direction with it and have work on projects with a team that I've like created, whether they work for the company or
content creators.
Yeah, just working for free,
You'll be wanting them at that point.
Yeah. Anyone can work on this free project. Yeah. Can you work for free though? Budget's £100 for like 5 days work.
Done.
Done. So yeah, it's I think getting more into a direction and just taking on more projects really and building from there. So
Do you think, I mean, having a goal, is that important, or having multiple goals? Do you think that's important, or is it just a journey that you kind of
I feel
see
like
where it
it's
goes?
useful to have a goal. Sometimes it will give you inspiration to keep going and motivation. Yeah, I think having a goal is useful. Gives you some direction.
Mm. I think having some structure is one of the most popular ways to gain traction and to gain some level of success. You see some of the
Yeah.
most successful artists, filmmakers, whatever, and they didn't just, it wasn't just by happenstance, right? It was by hard work, but hard work around
Yeah.
where they want to get to, or at least, some.
I feel like with artists sometimes it can be quite unstructured though, how
Yeah,
you create. I guess you can have a business around that is quite structured, but the actual creation process can be quite scattered. I found anyway, you just like, oh, I have an idea. And you're like, oh, I want to do it. And then you go and do it.
totally agree.
Which, yeah, ideas can come.
I struggle with that.
What
Really
idea
struggle.
creation?
My mind is, I was brought up very differently in a kind of non-creative household, I guess, and went into flying, became part of, very logical, very rational.
Oh, yeah, I'm
And
that too, though.
and then it's like, well, when you okay, I have an idea, and now I just want to do it, but I've got other things I need to do, and like I push everything aside, and then it's just all a mess,
Yeah.
right? I definitely need a bit of structure, but then I think, well, and then, it's not a maths problem, right? Creativity and idea generation and acting on ideas is not like a maths equation where you
No,
go, I need
yeah,
to put
yeah.
this there and I need to put this. But actually, a lot of it is.
A lot of it is.
We romanticize a lot, but a lot of it is, certainly
lot of
the
it.
pre-production is like,
Oh,
look at me
yes.
fucking organized.
It's just problem solving.
Yeah.
Like most of it is problem solving. And the end result can be really pretty, but it's pretty much just problem solving, especially when you're working with nature and
Mhm.
all that can
Oh.
go wrong with that. And working with people and everything like
People.
that. It's just, yeah. Actually, some of my favorite shots have been self-portraits, or
You
like
arrogant
self-timers.
fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have they? I
Fuck
haven't
it.
seen any.
Fuck them.
Yeah. Okay. I haven't seen any of your self. Oh, I seen one in a car. That wasn't a self portrait. That was maybe Finn took that one of. Maybe it was in. I saw a photo
yeah,
of
no.
you, very kind of side lit in a car or.
Oh yeah, that was in LA. Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
That was Finn.
that's
Yeah.
cool.
He was like, stop, 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 stop. Like, I want to take a picture of you. I'm like, okay. I'm like, yeah, more. Yeah.
Blue steel.
Yeah, please. Yeah. No, it's just been, some of them aren't like portraits per se. It's just a self timer of me in a location. Like, it's one I took in Finland when I was ski touring to this cabin, and it's just in Lapland in winter, so just snow everywhere, really cold, like -25 or something. And there was like a bit of a drift coming across the cabin. I knew as soon as I got there in the day that I wanted to shoot something there. And I love shooting silhouettes and backlit stuff, so I kind of knew what I was going to do. And there were other people there, but they weren't like my friends. I was on a photo tour and they were all inside eating dinner, and I'm outside on my own in the cold, just trying to get this shot of me stood in front of the light with like all the snowdrift behind. And I love that shot. I think it's one of my favorites that I've taken of myself. But that was, again, I guess a bit of problem solving. I had no one to shoot with, had to shoot myself, had to figure out how to do the focusing, exposure when you have to keep going back and forth to the camera in the cold, and the LED panel ended up dying. And it's like dealing with the cold in your hands and
Yeah.
operating the camera. It's, yeah.
First world problems, but problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. As you kind of build a bigger body of work, is that something you think about? What I want that body of work to be like, and what I kind of want to leave behind me as I
Yeah.
keep journeying through?
Yeah, the legacy, so to speak.
Mm.
So I haven't really thought about it too much for photography. For me, photography was just because I enjoyed it and I want to continue shooting what I enjoy, and that will obviously change in the future. I do want to inspire people to get out there and enjoy the outdoors, which is still true because most of my work is outdoors. But I think with filmmaking, I take a bit of a different approach to filmmaking where I like to have more of a narrative behind it. I just feel like, to me, that is how I've kind of always approached it. I don't know why I thought about with video that I think when I first got into it, I was like, what's the point if it doesn't have a story? Which I think it could be true for a lot of people, but that's just my approach that I take with it. But I think with that, I'd like to eventually just, I guess, create something that people remember and makes them feel something,
Yeah.
whether that be like make them happy or sad, just like evoke some emotion and again, like inspire people to create themselves. I feel like for me, that's what I get the most enjoyment from when I watch people's videos, whether it be like a film or a series or something where you're really taken back by and you remember for a long time and it makes you want to create yourself. Like when I saw Oppenheimer last year, that really drove me to make more films. I was already wanting to make films, but just the way that's shot and his lack of special effects as well was quite funny in an age where we're just increasingly going towards like digitally manipulated stuff. It's nice to see. Obviously, it's a huge budget. It's not going to be able to be for most people, but just being inspired in that way, just to think after you've seen a film, when you're in that state of awe and you just want to create something yourself, it's like I want people to get that from my work at some point.
Yeah, I think well, Oppenheimer, I mean, Christopher Nolan is just a
Yeah.
genius. We watched Interstellar actually the other day.
Oh my god.
It's top 10 movies of all time
Oh, I
for a
think
reason.
yeah.
It's just unbelievable. Plus the soundtrack.
Oh yeah, I think when you've got a soundtrack that good as well. I mean,
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think coming back to the storytelling thing, it it works for a reason. We're story beings. We resonate with story. We want to see ourselves in another story, or we want to, like you said, to feel something. And I think that's so important in today's short form content world, AI driven world, algorithm driven world. Is just they call it doom scrolling for a reason, because you don't get any joy.
you don't get
Rarely do you go, oh, and you feel something like that.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
how can you do that in fucking 30 seconds?
Yeah,
So,
that's
even
what's so
60,
annoying
you
about
can't.
things that have more of a story. They take time to develop. Like you're not gonna just
Yeah,
scroll past a
but I
book
think they
like
always rise to the top. I think they always come through in the end. We just talked about legacy. If we look back in 10, 20 years, we're not going to go, oh, look at my fucking Instagram reels. They were epic, right? You might look at the 5 films that you created, or even 5 short form films that you
yeah,
created, and
yeah.
go, they actually moved some people. And like you said, it doesn't have to be happy. It doesn't have to be sad. It can be confusion. Like I've watched stuff go, fuck, some of the best things I've ever watched, whether on TV or YouTube or whatever,
Yeah.
have made me feel something without me even knowing about it. Do you know what I mean? It's like a lot of the time, us as photographers, filmmakers, and my wife gets so fed up with it. So I watch, I look at the cinematography, look at the
Yeah,
lighting,
yeah,
or look at the
yeah.
grade, or look at the script is made, or the acting's made. You kind of break it down technically. But sometimes just if I find myself immersed in something and I'm either crying or I'm laughing or I'm like just filling up with emotion, I know it's like, I don't know how they've done it, but it's fucking amazing.
Yeah, that's when it's good. When, like you said, as filmmakers, photographers, you do analyze what's on screen. Sometimes that does remove you from the story and the characters because you're thinking, wow, that shot really nice. And wow, what lens was that?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's definitely anamorphic and all those
Yeah.
kind of things. So that, yeah, when it can take you past that and make you feel something, yeah, it's really special. And I think for the longest time, I didn't. You remember when people used to go to the cinema?
Oh, I
That
love it.
that was the way you watched the film,
Yeah.
right? You went to the cinema, and I remember doing that when I was 17 with our friends, all driving to the cinema to watch a film, and that'd be the main way we digested films. And again, like Oppenheimer, I saw that in the cinema. I think that was in the cinema for so long, wasn't it? And it wasn't anywhere else until that had finished.
Yeah, I was like, when is it coming out?
Yeah, and it didn't come out for
Yeah.
ages because he wanted people to
It's
view
great.
it, and it's great. I think ticket prices are very expensive, but it's. I remember when it was like it was like £4, and you got like buy one get one
I
free.
don't
But
care.
yeah,
I'd rather, like, if I'm feeding into that ecosystem
yeah.
for cinema rather than Netflix. I mean, I
Oh
love
yeah,
obviously we all love a bit of Netflix, but it's kind
we
of like,
do, but
again, it's that the more you have it, the less of an effect it has on you, right? Whereas
yeah.
if you go to the cinema, if you went to cinema every day, the less of an effect it would have on you, right?
Oh yeah, it was like, and it's more of an occasion as well. You go with your friends.
It's
It's
the
not,
environment.
yeah,
We went to see, we were in Dubai a couple of months ago and we saw June 2. which is fucking epic as
Haven't
well.
seen
Just,
that, yeah.
oh, it's such a visual, it's just such a visual journey. I mean, the story is because it's written on a from a book, and it's just a weird story that you kind of very abstract, right? But
Yeah.
visually, it's just you're like that all the time. Oh my god, what's next? It's just
Yeah, yeah.
gorgeous, absolutely
Wow.
gorgeous. We watched it in IMAX, and we could have bought normal tickets, like $20, but they had an option. The cinema had an option. You know, Dubai, they do everything
Yeah,
super,
massive on
yeah.
a huge
And it's
scale.
like, I can't remember what they called it. I think they called it Premier tickets, and it was like a booth each, you know, business class seat that went
Like a
flat. Yeah, and
sofa.
they delivered food to you, and you had, you know, it was just awesome. You had a massage thing in the chair. It was, and that, I think it would have been amazing anyway because it's an amazing film. But just
Yeah.
going with your friends or going with your partner, whatever it is, and just enjoying the experience as much as the film.
Yeah, I feel like
We
it's
missed that.
we do miss that. Like having an occasion with people in real life, you know,
Yeah.
going to rather than just watching Netflix. It's just too easy, and I feel like you don't get. There's too many distractions as well. You know, in the cinema, it used to be like turn your phone off before phones went into silent mode and things like that, where people don't get their phones out, do they? Really, in the cinema, because you'll see it light up as well. Why? I
In
mean, maybe I
America, they
haven't
do.
been. Did they? Maybe I haven't been to the cinema enough, but recently. But I feel like people do. Their attention span's probably slightly longer now that
Definitely. I mean, you buy a ticket for the purpose of, you know,
yeah,
you're
you
going to buy
can't
a
pause
ticket
it. You
otherwise.
can't
Yeah,
pause it.
yeah,
You can't pause
exactly.
it and scroll on
Yeah,
TikTok for
yeah,
an hour. You know,
yeah,
you have to sit there and watch it. So
yeah.
I want cinema to come back more. Actually, yeah. I mean, that'd be a dream one day. Maybe would to be make a feature length film.
Well, in between now and then, do you have any kind of definition of success that you think
Ooh,
about?
that I think about. Yeah, I don't really think about that very often.
That's
Actually,
nice.
yeah. Of what success is, probably because I never think I'll get there.
Oh.
No, I'm joking. It's
Well, you forget many people. You mentioned it earlier. You don't know. What did you say? You don't know what you know, or you don't know how you do what you know. Right? You just do it.
yeah,
But you've learned over the years. So my point is, like, people 5 years behind you be looking at you going, "Yeah, you fucking
yeah. I mean,
success."
I think that's the thing we touched on very briefly about imposter syndrome is that I feel like for some people you need that drive that keeps you going, and sometimes that drive is it's not good enough.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people, I don't want to say suffer with that, have it, but sometimes it is a bit of suffering. But yeah, I feel like I don't know what that is in particular, but I think I definitely have that where you're not dissatisfied with what you've done,
Yeah.
but you feel like it could be better, you know, or you want to do more of it. I think I've got to a point where it could be better, especially for filmmaking, because I'm much newer in that. But I just want to do more of it and build on it and keep getting better. So
If you do, like, I love the answer. You don't think about it. That
yeah,
means,
yeah.
you know, whether you care about it or not. I think too many people do care, but, you know, I've got to get there, and I've got to get there, and then they get there,
I feel like you'll
and
never get.
it's
I don't know if it's one of those things where I guess you've got to be happy with what you're doing. Otherwise, you're never going to achieve this. You're always going to be slightly dissatisfied, and you're just going to keep going. You know, when there's people who um, make a certain amount of money and they're like, I'll be happy when X. And that's kind of a downfall, really, because you're putting the happiness in the future. So if you're like, oh, I've got 100 grand now, but I really need 200 grand to get this life I want, and then I'll be happy. And then you get that, and then there'll be something else. And like kind of always chasing something that's in the future, I guess, is never going to make you fulfilled long term.
no.
So I mean, I've been trying to practice more gratitude, I guess, for like how far I've come. And like you said, people that will look up to you and be like, wow, I think like he's made it at this point, or I'd love to be like that. Because I remember that feeling when I first got into photography. And now that I've been into it for a while, it kind of still feels the same though. Like,
That's good.
yeah,
That's good. But it keeps you going.
it does keep
Keeps
you going. Yeah,
pursuing the next thing, but also it means you're humble.
yeah.
If it still feels the same, means you haven't changed as a
It
person
does.
because
It
of it.
does still feel the same. Like I love some of my previous work, and that's why I like to print them out and have them on the wall to remember what I've done in the past, like the memories I've created with people, and kind of the hard work I've put into it. But yeah, it feels pretty much the same to me as when I started, to be honest. So
What then is the key to getting better?
keeps getting better.
A lot of people just say, "Oh, you got to work hard." I mean, well, if you don't work smart, you could just be working hard at something that's not going to get you
To
there.
get better, I would say being around people who are like-minded in a similar craft is really helpful, and to like bounce ideas off each other and to just learn from each other in person, like we said earlier. That's the quickest way to learn, I think.
Mm.
Sometimes that might be quite hard to achieve though. When people always say, I'm sure everyone's heard this, where they're saying just surround yourself with people that you want to be like or who are better than you. And sometimes that's not very easy with your circumstance in your life, or you don't know these people, and it can seem quite daunting to try and do that. So I feel like it is important, but at the same time, I've definitely been in stages in my life where I wasn't around people who were really inspiring me, and I created work just from like reading books and getting like inspiration from like Pinterest and things like that, and just trying to work on it myself really in my own time. And eventually that enabled me to find people who were into the same craft. But initially starting off, I didn't know any photographers. Like
Yeah.
I wasn't one. So you've got to get better somehow. You've got to lift yourself off the ground. For me, that was reading books and just trying it.
Watching podcasts.
Yeah. I don't think there were video podcasts back then
No, they
in
weren't.
2015 or whenever it was.
I
Yeah.
think there were. I think I still listen to the Ricky Gervais podcasts with Stephen Merchant, Carl Pilton back on 2005, 2006. They were
Well,
like
going back.
the original, and they didn't even call it podcasts. They did audio books.
Yeah.
I was like, it's not a book. Like, don't call it. But we didn't know back then.
Yeah.
So I
that
still,
that format of just people chatting.
people chatting
Yeah.
over a microphone. Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier, and this is really interesting for me because the word photographer or the word artist, or we like to label things as all social constructs, like
Yeah. Yeah.
put people in boxes, and
Yeah. It helps us identify people.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But you mentioned earlier, like at that time when you started, you weren't a photographer, right? But when did you think you became a photographer, and kind of what triggers did you?
I guess it might be different for people now, but at the time, I guess when I started photography, I thought I had this idea in my head anyway when I started, that you weren't a photographer until you were like a working commercial photographer, for instance,
Right.
or you were getting paid for your craft, which I don't think that's true anymore necessarily. I guess it depends on the definition people want to go by, but I didn't call myself a photographer until I was working as it. So not for a few years. And people would say like, you're a photographer, and I'd say no, I'm not, because I felt like I wasn't good enough. Yeah, so I don't know whether that's a healthy way of viewing it or not. But that's what I did. Yeah.
I mean, we'll let the audience be the judge of that.
Yeah.
I guess. I mean, you've got enough people that love your work. I mean, that should speak for itself.
Yeah, maybe some people feel the same way,
Yeah.
Like I'm sure there are.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Loads of people doubt their
Yeah.
own ability for things, and I've definitely been one of those people for as long as I can remember. So yeah.
And
Something.
what would be your advice to those people? General advice to people getting, and we're going to kind of get onto the future of photography in a minute, but what would be your advice to people now picking up a camera going, I want to be a filmmaker, or I want to be a photographer? Can you think of any like big overarching things that they need to be aware of or remember?
I don't know whether this response is gonna not be.
Come on.
It's probably gonna be expensive. Especially, I guess gear is cheaper now to obtain the same level that you could have like 8 years ago or something. Like you can do a lot on your phone, especially with like the 15, like the iPhone 15 shoots raw and log, so that's pretty good. I shot photo in here earlier and edited that on Lightroom mobile, and it was, you saw it. It was shit.
That was great.
But it's fine. It's definitely enough to work with.
Absolutely.
And I've shot like astrophotography with phones for phone companies, and like, who knew you could capture the Milky Way with a phone?
Captain the Northern Lights with the phone.
Yeah, I mean, especially the
incredible.
it's gonna be expensive, but I guess it doesn't have to be as expensive as some others make it. I think for me, it was quite expensive because I had a lot of travel involved, and that adds cost.
Expensive with your time as well.
Yeah, it will take up a lot of your
If you
time.
love it, you're going to be wanting.
Yeah, I mean, I think for 5 years, that's all I want to do. That's all I did. All I thought about really was photography, and how am I going to make it in photography, or how am I going to get better? I need to get better and better and better. I didn't take a holiday for like 5 years because I don't think I still can really take a proper holiday.
Always shooting.
Yeah. Well, I'm always thinking, if I go to somewhere, how can I
Yep.
get something out of it for photography? Because one, I love doing it. And two, if you're working as it, you're thinking, I kind of need to always create something. I feel like that's where social media might put pressure on people as well, especially if you're posting a lot, you've always just got to be a content like machine, basically, which I don't think is very conducive to creating good. Some people take time to figure out ideas and concepts, and to it takes time, and it's not just people don't work like that.
Unfortunately, society laps that up. But I
Yeah.
mean, I totally agree.
Yeah.
And time, that's what I say to beginners all the time. Like, try your best to be patient. Don't be like me when I first started. Like, I want it now. Do this.
Oh,
and
yeah.
like, just it doesn't work like that. Most of the difference, you get to 0 to 1 to really easily, but 1 to 100, it really just takes some time, and to be patient with that, and consistently patient, and patience with consistency. It just comes with life.
I guess it is enjoying the stage you're at the time.
Yeah.
Like, I remember getting stoked on the images like back in like 2018, and I remember just being so happy with what I'd taken at the time. I look back on some of them now, I'm still like, some of them aren't the best. But I still like some of my older
But you were
work.
happy with them at the time.
Yeah, at the time, I remember being absolutely elated.
That's the beauty of photography. It
yeah.
captures a moment in time, not just the stuff that's in the image, but of the photographer, or the team, or the.
I feel like that's lost a bit quickly. We are to just throw away, I guess, content so disposable. It feels like these days, or like content that could be a photo or anything, just feels like no one gets to really take it in. Like you have like a print on the wall. Like, you go to a gallery and you try and soak it in, feel maybe what it was like to be there, or how the photographer wanted to portray the feeling in the image. Like, people don't think about that when they're viewing stuff. Yeah, having time, it does take a long time. It does take a long time, but enjoy it, I guess, along the journey, because it is a journey.
So we have.
Yeah.
It's the journey and the
The
process.
journey is probably the most fun part, really, actually. It is fun, obviously, when you take a nice photo and you love it and everything, but especially that's why I thought about getting more into like digital, like rendering and stuff like that, because I like, 3D art, because I used to do that as a designer. I used to model things and render them before I got into photography. So something like Blender, I feel like I'd pick up pretty fast. But I love being out there and creating something with people, like some of the stuff we made last year in LA. I remember all of us screaming our heads off, like, because we were just so excited about what we were
That's so
getting. And it's
cool.
like, that's just, honestly, for me, it's the best feeling.
Yeah.
It's the best feeling.
Me too. That is a rush.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was talking about this with another photographer. He does similar stuff to me. And he shoots large format. Jimmy Nelson, he shoots large format, 10x8.
Yeah.
And he basically has just one go, right? And he's taking photos of like 10 tribesmen, all arranged in a certain way, and light, and just fucking everything. And he's got one, probably 3-second exposure, just to hopefully nail it. And when he knows he's nailed it, it's just elation, right?
On film? No.
On film.
Wow.
Yeah, it's insane. His work is incredible.
How does he know he's nailed it, though?
He doesn't. It takes him, he said, from that moment to the point he gets it on his screen is a month and a half. So he's got a month and a half of, he knows him. He's experienced enough to know.
This should.
Yeah, I got 99% chance. I'm pretty sure I got that.
Yeah.
But obviously you never know, especially when you're traveling with all this stuff. But yeah, I think that is the biggest. Yeah. I think that is the most enjoyable thing about all of this, and people lose that, right? And I've been there. I got caught up in like, I just need to get some photos, and you have to kind of step back and go, well, why do I just need to get photos? Because I got to post. And and once you build up a following, it could be 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000. You feel like then, well, I've got to keep them, right? And I'm only going to keep them if I keep, the algorithm's going to push my stuff if I keep. And this is the rat race we're all in, and it's so damaging. On the flip side, it can give you a little nudge. Yeah, it can be like, okay, I've got to go. I don't have to, but I feel like I need to go and give my audience something, or I need to go and create something because it's been a while?
Yeah, I feel like that's where I want to do when I'm not creating all this stuff, because realistically, if it's for like personal work, it costs money, time, got to prepare it, and it doesn't happen. Especially, I feel like the further I've gone into this journey, the more involved shoots are, harder they are to pull off, more
Yeah.
time, money they cost. So it's kind of harder to make content if it's just the photos. So it's making things around that, or just the videos. It's making things around that to give back to your audience and give them something, rather than, because I've definitely gone through phases where I'm sure people have too, where they just feel burnt out by it, like the pressure, and feel like, why am I even doing this in the first place? And you just don't post.
Yep.
And I've done that quite a lot
Yeah.
recently.
I can hear your audience
Yeah, they
accepting your apologies.
just unfollow.
All right, while we
Yeah.
wrap up, I'm keen to hear your opinion on, where you think photography is going over the next. I think we've talked a lot about where it is at the moment.
Yeah.
Photography, filmmaking, maybe a little bit different. I think that has much more. I don't know, I'm going to hear from you, but maybe it
Yeah.
has more movement to adapt. But photography and 2D images and still images, where do you think that the future of it goes over the next 2, 5, 10 years?
Oof. I feel like commercially, it's going to be less prevalent because of AI. Just because of how good it is. I mean, I've used Midjourney. I've made stuff on Midjourney, and it's all getting fed from all the photos we've ever taken, which is
Ironic.
yeah. Like, you get really good at something and it gets better.
Yeah.
I know we take inspiration from each other and copy each other, but it's literally copying everything. So I feel like commercially, it's probably gonna be taken over by more and more AI, for certain things, in particular, like products, things like that. Hopefully, they keep people in it, because there's something unique about, especially when it's more of a documentary type style of photography, where it's a story about a real person.
Mm.
I feel like people are going to be more drawn to that in the future, because at some point everything will just be generated and people will be craving real life stories, people, whether or not it's a story about how someone created something and the story of that photographer and what happened, or the story of a person, the other side of the lens. So I feel like that's always going to stick around. But yeah, commercially, for maybe still life and things like that, I
Yeah.
don't feel like it's going to be the best for them. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. And people say sometimes it's similar to how analog and digital came around, when people were reluctant to shift over to digital. Well, I don't think it is the same as that, really, because it's one, they were just both means of capturing what was in front of you, right? They were just a tool. But AI is more than a tool, because it replaces it, right? It's not a tool for capturing real life.
Mm.
It's not real life.
Mm.
So analogy, I don't think it's the best analogy, to be honest. So yeah, we'll see. It's interesting times. But we can't do anything about it, really,
No,
can
we
we?
can't.
So
And I mean, I'm not sure I believe that AI has to be replacing anything or conflated with photography.
no.
I see them as a completely separate,
Yeah.
mechanisms. I don't. Yes, AI will. I definitely agree with you. Will replace certain forms of photography.
Yeah.
But it's not going to replace photography.
No, it
Like,
won't completely replace photography.
And I don't see it as a big danger to photography. It's
feel
just
like people-
photography will just adjust a little bit.
Yeah,
and
I
then
mean, I feel like
we'll move on together.
people are always going to enjoy capturing the real life in front of them with a camera.
And that will arguably become more valuable.
Yeah, because no one's
Yeah.
doing it. Or like, maybe there'll be less and less people doing it, so the knowledge is more valuable.
People will probably value an authentic, real image over an artificial one. They both will have their places, and
Yeah,
so be it.
I hope so, because I want to continue
Yeah.
doing this. So yeah.
Well, I hope you do, and please do. Please keep it up.
Yeah.
I love your work, and I know a lot of my
Thanks, man.
audience will love your work. So best of luck. I hope you stay in Bali for a while as well.
Yeah, we'll see.
And thanks for joining us today. It's been an
Yeah.
absolute pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah.
Where can we find you? Where can we see your work?
So I guess the easiest way is probably Instagram, at Elliot J Simpson, and then from there you can probably find everything else.
Everything.
Yeah.
Instagram's still the hub.
Yeah, the main one. Yeah,
Me
put the
too.
most time into that, to be honest. So yeah.
Yeah, imagine if it just went away overnight.
Oh, I'd still have my work though, so
Yeah, that's a good lesson to
yeah.
make sure you've diversified enough so you don't lose all your shit if one of them goes under.
Oh yeah, if you just post your work to what, like you'd lose all your work?
Well, no,
No.
if let's say your account got deleted
Oh yeah, and you'd
or
lose.
Instagram fucking, I don't know, there's an Armageddon on Instagram.
Well, TikTok got banned in America.
It did, didn't it?
Well, it's
Yeah.
going to, right?
Going to, not yet, but yeah, it was ruled to be banned. Yeah.
Oh, you'd be sweating.
That's
if you're-
brilliant.
Yeah.
Fucking TikTok is
Fuck
shite.
TikTok.
All right, mate. Cheers. Thanks so
All
much.
right, thanks,
Pleasure.
man. Yeah.
Cheers.